a lot of people say how we are so lucky, that we have this safety net that we can always fall back on if, whatever that we try to do out there fails, right? But, what they don't understand is that along with that privilege, right, comes great expectations, right? My grandfather understood this and he made it a rule that if anyone wanted to, had any intention to come back and join the family business, they must first gain enough experience out there in the real world before they're able to contribute meaningfully to the company, right?
You're listening to Foodie Canteen, a food podcast brought to you by Good Foodie Media. This is your host, Castle Lim. Today on the show, I have someone with me whom a lot of people may know him as the third generation creator of a friendly, fuzzy blue monster every Malaysian grew up eating. But today, he's here to share with us his side of the story, how he went from helping out with the family empire to paving his own path in retail for Gen Zs. Listen in. Hey Vuitton, welcome to the show.
Hi, morning, Castle. Great to be here.
Happy you are here to share your side of the story. This is going to be so exciting. How are you feeling?
Good. Thanks for having me. It's my first time doing something like that, so
Yes.
please apologize. I would like to apologize if I may sound nervous.
No, you'll be fine. So I've read so many cool articles about you.
Yeah. I had to, promote this new venture of mine. So whatever I can do, that can help the company, I'll definitely do my best.
I want to start from the beginning. Let's go back to Melaka. That's where you were born and raised in. How was your childhood like growing up there?
Well, growing up in Melaka, it was a simple life, we weren't very well to do back then, So for me, I went to a public school in Melaka, and I have no regrets, being sent to a public school because can you imagine, with a name like Vuitton, right? Growing up in KL, the amount of bullying that I would have received. So, I had a very good childhood. I escaped, scot free. And it's the thing, that's the thing about like growing up in a small town, right? Nobody knew what a Vuitton was back then, right? So I had a relatively painless childhood.
You escaped school bullying about your name.
Yeah.
Potential school
I just
bullying.
can't imagine growing up in, KL today, right, with a name like Vuitton.
Tell us a bit about the new and old Melaka. How is it different now compared to back then?
Well, Melaka is not like how it used to be. Back then you had large fields, beach fronts. These are all now replaced with buildings, due to commercialization, right? So recent governments have done a good job in promoting tourism in Melaka, but of course, before COVID struck, Melaka was booming. While it's good for the state, it's brought along a lot of traffic congestion, right? So for Melakans, obviously, we're not too happy with the traffic, but it's something that we learn to live with, as we share our state with everyone else, right? But at the end of the day, it's good for the state.
And I asked this question to all of our guests this season. What are some local foods our listeners must try if they ever visit Melaka?
Well, I don't think listeners need any help from me, There are no more secrets in Melaka. A simple Google search and they will know exactly what to eat in Melaka. So that's the power of social media today, right? A gem will not stay hidden for too long, unfortunately. The pandemic has caused, the closure of many generational establishments, unfortunately. It's very sad, but I believe, the food culture in Melaka is very strong. And I'm encouraged by new cafes and restaurant concepts that are opened by young Melakans. So I think they will be the ones responsible for creating the next generational food establishments.
Do you have any favorites?
Well, of course, satay, chicken ball rice, these are the very, of course, Nonya food as well, right? So these are they're very cliche, but, still my favorites.
When were you first exposed to business?
I was exposed to business from a very, very young age, all the way from, dinner table, to visits, to my dad's office in the factory, yeah, so business gets discussed a lot, whether it's family holidays, whether it's family lunches, dinners, it's always about business, so you can say that we've all been groomed from a very young age, which is good.
Do you see your life being different from your friends at school?
Not really. Not really. I mean, we led a very, very simple life, we don't feel like we are so privileged that, we stand out when comparing ourselves versus our schoolmates. But, it's very, very, a very simple life back in Melaka.
And were there any expectations growing up?
For sure there are expectations, that you would eventually, it's a very like, traditional Chinese kind of family thing, right? Where you're always expected to help out in the family business, but, a lot of people say how we're so lucky, that we have this safety net that we can always fall back on if, whatever that we try to do out there fails, right? But what they don't understand is that along with that privilege, right, comes great expectations, right? My grandfather understood this and he made it a rule that if anyone wanted to, well, had any intention to come back and join the family business, they must first gain enough experience out there in the real world before they're able to contribute meaningfully to the company, right? So rather than just being parachuted in fresh from uni and gaining zero respect, he rather us, gain some experience outside and have something to contribute. So that's what we all did because, at the end of the day, we needed to be able to contribute, right? But mostly it's because, they knew that the third generation are always known for screwing up the business, right? So they wanted us to screw someone else's company up rather than our own. No, but it's good. I mean, I truly agree with my grandfather. The only way to gain respect is if you're able to bring something to the table, right? You gain zero respect by being parachuted in with zero experience.
And how did you handle those expectations? Back then you were like 20 something and you're still, I mean, you've, like you said, you've been exposed to business since you were at a young age, but you're still in uni studying and don't really know what you want to do for your future yet.
Well, you start from the bottom, of course. You don't come in and assume like a really high position, right? It's always good to learn from the bottom, and that's how you get better at managing those expectations because with all that experience that you've gained, you get better at what you do, and that helps us manage those expectations.
You spent your teenage years in Melaka, then you went on to Melbourne for school. What did you study in school?
I did a double degree back in Melbourne Uni. I graduated with Bachelor's of Commerce and Information System. But, that took 5 years of my life. If anyone wants my advice going forward, right, I would tell them that, they should just focus on one degree, don't waste your time with double degrees. It's always better these days, right, to specialize in something rather than be a jack of all trades.
And like you said, your grandfather's expectation about you guys before coming into the company, you have to work somewhere else first, and you did that. Can you share with us your experiences?
As soon as I graduated, right, I spent an extra year in Melbourne to work for our distributor in Australia. right? So basically my job was to drive around the whole of Victoria, the state of Victoria, knocking on canteen doors, trying to convince canteen operators, right, to sell Mamee Monster snacks, right? So I was always known as the Mamee Boy, right? The monster boy.
How old were you that time?
Oh, that was I believe I was about 24. Yeah, so yeah, that was the first job that I had after graduating, and then when I came back to Malaysia, I started work with OSK Investment Bank. So I spent 4 years in OSK as the management associate, and I really learned a lot about the whole finance industry, right? And I must say that really helped me contribute to Mamee when I joined it after OSK.
And how did the idea to start your own venture, EMAT24, which we're going to talk about a lot, like how did this idea to start EMAT24 come about?
Well, I mean, we've always had a very good working relationship with the principal of EMAT24, which is Shinsegae, the Shinsegae group in Korea. We've been producing products for them for the last 12 years, so this was just, us taking the relationship to the next level, by forming, by exploring more opportunities together. But also, we missed out on one opportunity to operate a major convenience store brand here in Malaysia. It's just that the timing wasn't right. But when we were given this opportunity, it was like our second chance. Given a second chance, and it was an opportunity that was too good to pass this time around. Because the Korean wave was very strong back then, still is today. It was just a very good timing for us to explore this opportunity.
Even though both of them are kind of like snacks/food, but it's food manufacturing and retail. It's very different. And it's only been a few months since the first Reserve store opened in June of last year. How has the transition been for you?
Well, it's been good. Obviously we opened at a very difficult time, right? Where the country is still not fully opened up yet. We were still confined to a very limited kind of like radius, right? But we were forced to open anyways, and I'm glad that we did. We currently have 16 outlets. Some may say that that's really quick, right? To get from one outlet to 16 within a matter of like 7 months. But I would say that that's still slow compared to some of our peers, right? But I still feel that it's important to take our time, to refine our offering, to improve our service level, picking the right locations, and most importantly, to understand the needs of our customers. So once we've had a very good understanding, then I believe that we will have the confidence to grow more rapidly. Right. So it's yes, it is a game on numbers, but for now it's about making sure we have the right product for our customers. Yeah.
And talking about location, how do you define and know that this is a strategic location for your brand?
I think you've got to look at the population around it, right? You can never neglect the footfall, right? Potential footfall. I think that is very important. And next, you need to know the kind of demographics that you want to reach out to, right? And you need to identify areas where the demographics are suitable to what we require, right? So, but definitely, you need to look at population. But what we realize is that, we got to start moving further out from the city center because, people within the city center, they just got too many options. They're spoiled for choice. By moving further out of the city center, we're giving people the opportunity to experience something new. right? And perhaps frequency of visit will be a lot higher outside of KL.
And talk about options, like nowadays we really have so many options, whether it's physical stores, especially with the rise of online shopping, creating a sense of loyalty, and especially for your target audience, Millennials and Gen Zs. It is not easy. Like how are you doing that?
Yeah, it's very tough, especially if you are trying to target the young consumers, right? These consumers, they have no loyalty anymore, right? Loyalty is a thing of the past. These days, the young people are motivated by new experiences, or they are excited about new experiences. So it's very important for us to ensure that the customers get they get exactly that, right? As soon as they walk into our stores, right, they feel like they're being transported to another country. In our example, Korea, right? We want to make them feel like we want them to question whether or not they're really in the convenience store, or are they in a cafe or a quick service restaurant, So these days, right, with anything that we try to put out there, right, we have to first ask ourselves, is this product Instagrammable or not?
Wow. That's the first question you ask.
Yeah, because if the product is
Wow.
not Instagrammable, right, people are not going to be bothered to spread the word for you, or to share this exciting experience with their friends, right? I mean, who wants to take a picture of themselves eating just plain instant noodles and post it online? They know they're not going to get enough likes because there's nothing exciting about that. So if it's something that's Instagrammable, right, customers will do the marketing for you, right? So what we find is that you need to be more customer centric these days. Gone are the days where somebody or a company like us can afford to be product centric, where we just put the products on the shelf and expect it to sell. These days there needs to be so much research that goes into understanding what customers want, and then only coming up with a product that meets those needs. So that's what we mean about being customer centric. Yeah, so that's very important today.
How does a day in your life look like? Like, can you give us example of some challenges you might face, and how do you handle and walk through them?
Wow, my time is mainly spent on trying to identify new locations, visiting our stores to make sure everything's okay, and also doing a lot of food tasting. Probably that's the most fun part of my day, right? In my role, I face all kinds of challenges, simply because, I am someone with very little retail experience, right? So this whole experience actually has been quite an emotional roller coaster, right? The ups, they never last very long, and the downs seem to last forever, right? I learn so much every day, right? But I take comfort knowing that I have my team behind me, right? I never make any major decisions, right, without first checking with my team, right? Because I hire them for a reason, right? Because of their experience. If I'm not going to rely on their experience, then I might as well do everything on my own, right? So that's how we handle issues together.
And what are your thoughts on the local convenience store scene in Malaysia?
Well, of course, the locals convenience store scene needs kind of like a wake up call, right? And how here in Malaysia today, customers have regarded convenience stores as a place where they go to get emergency supplies, right? But somehow when they travel overseas, right, to a country that has a more mature convenience store industry like Korea, Japan, or even Thailand, that the mindset immediately changes, right? The first thing they want to do is they want to go and visit a convenience store, right? Because it reminds them of food. right? The CVS industry in Malaysia may seem saturated with plenty of competition, but that's where I see an opportunity, because competition is not entirely bad, right? Because we are all doing our part, because we all push each other, right, to be better. And when we keep pushing each other, the only winner out of this are the customers, right? Because we are all doing our part in trying to change customers' perception towards convenience stores as a place where they go to grab food first and foremost, right? As customers start to increase their frequency of visits, right? And as the number of stores per capita catches up to some of these more mature markets, then we all stand to gain as the overall pie gets bigger and the industry thrives, right? Like what they say, a rising tide lifts all boats, so that's what we're trying to do.
But how can you change this Malaysian habits? Like you said, Malaysian has this mindset that going to the convenience store is getting, 100 plus, a last minute condom. But now you're just like, I want you to walk into E-Mart24 and feel like you are in Korea and post about it on Instagram.
Well, that's where innovation comes into play, right? For us, our mission is to bring affordable halal Korean street food to Malaysians, right? Because first of all, Korean food, there's no reason why Korean food has to be non-halal, right? And there's a reason. There's no reason why Korean food should be should not be affordable, right? So that's what we are trying to bring to customers, right? And the more unique, the more unique the product offering, right? The easier it is to change customers' perception, right? Because again, it all comes down to that experience. We want, as soon as they come in and they realize that they are experiencing something very new and unique, mindsets get changed a lot easier, right? So it's up to us to continuously think about, how to innovate and how to bring more and more exciting products that are affordable and halal to our customers.
Actually, I can see myself changing also because I think probably a few weeks ago, I was going home to visit my nephew in my hometown. And then I was like, he's 2 years old. So I was like, I need to get him something to like make him remember me and make him like me. So instead of like going to this like Kedai Runjit that I always used to go to a long time ago to get like those Apollo and like those like what Circle 8 like little chocolates.
Yeah.
I went to a not local, like near me, there's this Japanese convenience store. So I just went and then I got this, like the most popular items, the one with like the super cool packaging. And I just like, wow, I'm not going to those Kedai Runjit anymore to get this Apollo, but instead I'm going to this cool Japanese convenience store and trying to get the most trendy items that looks good with the good packaging. And I was shocked, and I feel like my nephew's generation, which is the Gen Z, I believe, are going to grow up so differently than compared to me as a millennial.
Yeah, I mean, that's what competition does, right? The like what I mentioned earlier, right? The more we push each other to be better, right? At the end of the day, customers like yourself, you guys benefit because, you guys are just going to get so many options. Of course, hopefully, with this, the next generation will also start to accept that, convenience stores are now more than just a place where you go to get emergency supplies.
What do you think are some of the things, experiences, or values you've learned from OSK or even Mamee that you're applying now in your own venture at E-Mart24?
Well, of course, I learned the most from my time at Mamee. I spent 12 years there, right? So the three values that I'm bringing with me are involvement, integrity, and innovation, right? For involvement, I always tell my team that, we need to lead by example. If you want something done right, you got to get your hands dirty. So I personally go down to the stores, we scrub the floors, we clean the windows, so we do it together as a team, right? Because involvement is very, very important, right? The next one is integrity. Integrity is important because it is the foundation of trust. I give my managers, right, a lot of autonomy, right? And without trust, right, it's very difficult to give autonomy to my heads, right? But definitely, it's all about building that trust with my team, and integrity is actually very, very important element in that. For innovation, I cannot stress this enough, that it's absolutely crucial for eMart24. And if we are expected to compete with the incumbents and remain relevant to our customers, we definitely need to be very innovative.
And I'm sure some of our listeners who's listening to this podcast, they might be interested in getting a franchise from other countries into Malaysia. Can you walk us through what is the process like?
Oh, okay. Of course, the toughest part is convincing the principal that Malaysia is a place worth investing in, right? Secondly is that, as we're operating a foreign brand here, we need to make sure that we get the necessary approvals. You need to check to see what kind of approvals are required in order for you to conduct your business here, right? But you need to make sure you get approvals from local authorities to operate. As of course, their goal is to protect local businesses, and we totally understand that, right? But the whole process took a long time for us, getting this approval. But I'm glad that we're doing everything by the books and have respect for the rule of law, right? So it's very important to do your homework, to make sure that you understand all the requirements, local requirements, before you start your business.
And you guys are planning to launch 300 stores across Malaysia in the next 5 years. I mean, now we are in the second year, so in the next 4 years, what are some of the challenges you are anticipating?
Well, of course, 300 stores in 5 years may seem like a very daunting task. It is very challenging, considering that today we are only at 16 stores, right? However, we believe in taking our time to identify the right locations and to ensure that we have the right offerings for our customer. We are also limited by resources, right? Because, we have to always remember that we are a startup. A lot of the convenience stores in Malaysia are operated by large conglomerates that have huge machineries behind them. We're not like that. I'm still very, very surprised, today that, we're able to build something with just a handful of people, and going against these guys with deep pockets, and huge resources. So for us, we have to always remind ourselves that we're a startup. And once we have the right formula for success, rest assured we will be ramping up our efforts.
Do you have any advice for people? Because hearing you speak, you've been with Mamee for over a decade, and then now to go from food manufacturing into retail space, which is a totally new space for you, it takes some kind of courage. And like you said, starting as a startup all over again. For people who are listening who are probably fearful to jump from their comfort space, what they're familiar with, into something uncomfortable, maybe learning a new skill or like a whole new industry, do you have any advice for them?
Well, that's a very good question because, I sometimes till this day still ask myself why I did it, right? I left something that's so comfortable and so established, right? To go into the unknown and to try something that I have no experience in. But at the end of the day, right, it's a leap of faith, right? It's about building my own legacy. Right, I want to be able to tell my kids that, I've made that very difficult decision. I've gone ahead. I've taken some risks, and I've built something on my own. right? So that was my main motivation for wanting to do something like this, right? But for anyone who's thinking about also bringing other brands from other countries, right? You must first understand, or you must at least make sure, right, that the brand values are aligned with your values, right? You have to make sure that the principle gives you the flexibility to be creative and gives you the flexibility to localize. Because if you can't localize, right, there's very little chance for success here in Malaysia, right? You need to do your homework, to determine whether or not the product offering is exciting enough, to be relevant over the next 5 years, and you feel that whatever that you want to bring is just a fad, or it's just like, a trend today, then, it's not going to survive the next 2 to 3 years, right? So it's very important to determine whether or not this thing has legs, to carry you over the next 5 years, right? So that would be my advice to anyone who's thinking about, bringing in their own brands.
Vuitton, thank you so much today for sharing your knowledge. I love especially what you said about legacy. I guess when you have a vision, you know what you want to be remembered for, may it be for yourself, for your friends, or for your kids. You will have the courage to step into a new space. And really, thank you for sharing your insights. I'm sure this is going to be super helpful for our listeners.
No worries, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You have just listened to Foodie Canteen. This show is produced by me, your host Castle Lim, and co-written by Sulin Chung. Foodie Canteen podcast is made possible by the amazing team at Good Foodie Media. Check us out on Instagram and YouTube at Foodie Canteen for more. Follow us for brand new episodes every Friday. See you next week.